All right, hello out there. Our apologies for a slightly late start today. The stars of the show were getting their makeup put on, but we're ready, and I want to thank you for joining us for this Facebook Live application webinar for the Next Founders program. My name is John French. I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications for Next Canada, and over the next 45 minutes or so, you're going to have an opportunity to learn about the Next Founders program from entrepreneurs who have gone through it and figure out if it might be a good fit for you. A couple of quick housekeeping items before we dive in too deep. This is being recorded and will, in addition to being posted on our Facebook page, be posted to our Vimeo and YouTube channel so that you can watch it in glorious high definition afterwards. If you have questions, please submit them through Facebook Live. You can also email us at info@nextcanada.com. You can send us questions through Twitter. And we have a few events coming up over the next few days that you might be interested in. For those of you that are watching from Waterloo, we'll be in KW at Communitech on Thursday in the Jelly Bean Room at 11:30 with some of our local alumni. So sign up for that. The information's on our website. We're also accepting sign-ups for our open office hours where you can talk to members of the team. That can also be done through our website. And just a reminder that the application deadline for the program for Next Founders is March the 20th. And so get that application in online. Before you get to meet our alumni, I want to talk a little bit about Next Canada because we offer 3 programs, not only Next Founders, but also Next 36 and Next AI. And I want to make sure that there's no confusion. And also a lot of what we've learned through those other programs is applied directly to Next Founders. And so Next Canada is a nonprofit charity that has been around for 8 years. And 8 years ago, we launched Next 36. And if you remember, 8 years ago, the entrepreneurial landscape looked a lot different than it does today, where there are many accelerators, incubators, and programs for entrepreneurs. Back in 2010, Next 36 was one of the only games in town, and it was focused on young entrepreneurs that were ready to start brand new businesses. They were university students or recent grads. We provided them with funding, mentorship, and what we call founder development, which is a structured education program to launch these brand new businesses. We applied a lot of those same learnings to Next Founders and also to Next AI, which we launched 2 years ago and is an AI accelerator for AI-enabled companies. Those 2 other programs accept applications in the fall, and Next Canada, across all of our programs, is really focused on increasing Canadian prosperity by identifying and supporting a small number of high-impact entrepreneurs and providing them with the mentorship, the funding, and the education and the network to really scale up their businesses, make an impact on Canada, and also we want to encourage the adoption of technology across the country. And what happened after Next 36 was launched is that founders were coming to us that had a little more traction. They weren't early stage, idea stage businesses, but they had revenue. They had raised a significant amount of funding. They had employees, and they said, if I could apply if I had what you provide to the Next 36 right now, or when I was starting a business, I would be much further along. And so we built a curriculum that was for founders of companies that were scaling. They either had revenue, they had raised money, they were working in a lab on research that they were trying to commercialize, and we delivered this flexible program that's customized to those founders. And so Next Founders this year will have a 2-day immersion block that will take place at the beginning of May. And then you'll receive a calendar, if you're accepted into the program, of all of the events, all of the workshops, all of the lectures and classes with top faculty that come in from around North America. And you're able to decide what makes the most sense for you based on your busy schedule as a founder, and also based on your background. The prototypical founder for this program, we had a lot of people who hadn't taken business programs or business courses. And so Next Founders was partially to fill in those gaps of business acumen to people who might have engineering or science or arts backgrounds. And that kind of is the genesis of how Next Founders was created. I'm lucky today to be joined by 3 of our alumni, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves. And we'll start with Abbas, who is the co-founder of Crowdbabble, founder of Crowdbabble.
Thanks, John. Yeah, so I'm Abbas Alidina, founder and CEO at Crowdbabble. I initially studied engineering, so I had a technical background. And just to give you a quick background on my experience, my first job was as an engineer. I then decided I wanted to move into the business world, and I worked at Deloitte for about 3 years, working with some of the largest banks in North America. I then got a little bit sick of the corporate world and wanted to start my own business or work in a startup at least. So I actually came across an opportunity to move to Dubai and join a startup, which I did back in 2008. The startup failed really quickly, but I stuck around and I ended up starting a digital marketing agency. I ended up selling that agency to an ad agency and moved back to Canada in 2015 to start Crowdbabble.
Perfect. Next up, Jane Wang, who's the co-founder and CEO of Optimity.
Hi, thanks for having me here. My background is in science, so biochem and statistics from McGill. And then out of that, I worked for the hospital. I did a number of clinical trials, joined a pharmaceutical company, started doing it across Europe, North America, Japan, global clinical trials. I did that for a number of years until I took an MBA. So I went to Ivy for my MBA, and after that I did consulting for a little bit too. And bumped into this great opportunity, bumped into really great people that also wanted to start ventures, and took a chance. And 4 years later, Optimity is operating and doing well. So that was also kind of my journey to where I am now.
Correct. And Elijah Moore, co-founder of Collage.
Hey, I'm Elijah. Excuse me. And I actually started in business school in my undergrad. I went to the Ivy School of Business as well. It's a great school. And I ended up, like so many people do out of business school, working in finance, in investment banking. I spent a few great years doing that, but realized that wasn't the path that was meant for me. So I left to start a business straight out of that job. That was called Sailboat, and that's the business I actually did the Next Founders program with. And that business didn't turn out as well as myself and everybody had hoped, but I got right back at it with Collage, and that's what I'm doing today. That was 2 years ago, and things have been going really great. So I could point to the Next Founders as being a huge inflection point in my career.
Perfect. And that's a good segue. We're actually lucky in that of the 3 alumni we have here, 2 of them went through the program a few years ago, Elijah and Jane, and Abbas went through last year. So you're going to get to hear a little bit about how the program has changed over the years as well. But maybe each of you could tell us, take a deep dive on your venture and kind of share what your company does.
Yeah, sure. I'll start because I have the microphone. So Collage is an HR platform meant specifically for Canadian small businesses. And the secret sauce for us is that we not only do HR management, so like onboarding and time off tracking and performance reviews and recruiting and things like that, and we make that easy, but we'll also integrate our clients' benefits plans with any insurance company in Canada. And this is a big leap forward because most benefits plan management is done with paper today. So our view, we make HR software, and that's how we make an impact in a lot of businesses' day-to-day lives. The bigger vision for our company is actually to build like the technological fabric between small businesses and insurance companies, which we think will lead to, cause us to have a big disruptive position in this industry and make things a lot better for everybody involved. Is that a deep enough dive? Do you want to? I could do a tour of our software if you want, but maybe I should pass the mic.
Yeah, perfect. That was great.
Yeah.
So Optimity is an AI-driven digital health platform. What we do is promote proactive health, so small healthy habits for busy professionals. So we'll sync with their calendar and slot in little things that you can do, such as sitting up straight as we're here. And what we do in terms of outcomes for businesses, we work with employers and insurers, so to help them also promote healthy habits within their pool of people. And that's where we're getting a lot of impact. We now work with 6 carriers and over 80 organizations. So lots of people that are on it, and it's been a really great journey. We came into Next Founders as my health sphere, as I'm building this sphere of health. And we did a rebrand and really helped me kind of think bigger about what do I want to have in terms of impact, not just in the health, but social, other types of financial wellness, overall mental health. So it really kind of helped me expand my scope of dream bigger as a Canadian female founder.
Great, thank you.
Awesome. So just to give you a quick background about Crowdbabble, we basically help marketers to do 3 things. That's one, measure their social media performance. 2 is benchmark their performance against competitors. And 3 is to optimize their social media performance. And we do this with analytics and reports. And we actually have a proprietary predictive technology where we help marketers to better plan their marketing budgets so that they can make the best use of their marketing dollars. And before we joined the Next Founders program, we had a much smaller scope to what we were trying to solve. We were super focused on social media, and after Next Founders, we've broadened our scope. So now we understand marketers have over 130 different marketing channels at their disposal, such as Facebook Live, and a bunch of others like Amazon Alexa and message bots, and the list is just growing. So now we're helping marketers to basically answer the question of how do I best spend my marketing dollars?
Great, thank you. And I should mention that most of you, or all of you, actually were also involved with the DMZ at Ryerson University. And I would be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to our friends at DMZ who are hosting this Facebook Live today. So thank you for all of your continued support as a partner of Next. Next question, we'll stick with Abbas. Why did you apply to Next Founders, and what were you hoping to get out of the program?
Yeah, so when I first heard about Next Founders, we were in a stage in the business where we were growing, but I envisioned that if we kept grinding for the next 18 to 24 months on the current business, we'd probably hit a few million in annual run rate. And I was just at a point where it's not my first business, and I just felt that with time being my most precious resource, and also the time of our collective team being our most precious resource as a company, we wanted to do things that were way bigger. We wanted to create more value. We wanted to have a bigger impact. So we felt that Next Founders could help us to kind of think bigger and really change that trajectory for the current business. And that's why I joined Next Founders. Did it really help? So going through the program, it definitely helped in thinking bigger. And I think it's something that I'll may look back in 10 years and 20 years and look at Next Founders as kind of being that pivotal moment that helped me to change the vision that I had.
Terrific. Thank you. Same question for you, Jane.
I think Next Founders was interesting because at that time, I went through an MBA, so it was traditional. But when I was going through my MBA, there was actually an entrepreneurial stream at Ivy, and I was not interested in that. So I started my business really out of a real. It was a personal passion. It was something that I really wanted to do. It was a pet project for 3 years before I actually went to do anything about it. And when I first started, I felt that I was under-equipped with certain amount of, I would just say, courage and wanting, like that leadership skill. I was an operator versus a real leader. And I think what I thought Next Founders would help me do, and it did, was really kind of pull myself out of this golfer hole where I was just operating on a daily basis and really kind of think about, what do I want to leave? What do I want to get to in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? Because, right, as Stephen Covey, I'm sure most of you have read his book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. You want to begin with the end in mind. And I think a lot of times when we start from the operator's perspective, we don't start with that side, and it was an indulgence. I said this to you earlier that this Next Founder was just almost like a mini MBA for myself, where it was very indulgent. All I thought about was this business, and all I thought about is what do I want out of it 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, and thinking through the lens and hearing from other people who've built huge businesses, billion-dollar businesses, was also really helpful. So I thought that itself was kind of a way to pull back, think about overall strategy, and think about what do I want to leave behind after I worked on something so hard for a few years.
Great answer. Elijah.
So for me, back when I applied, I was a solo founder working on a business that I just started, and I'd raised an angel round, and things were going decently well. But the main reason that I applied was to join the network. And I saw all the individuals involved with the Next Founders, and there were a lot of people that I, from a distance admired and I wanted exposure to. And that was my main motivation for it. I was 23 years old when I started the program, and I thought that I had all the knowledge that I needed in order to, run a successful business. But what I found through the program was one of the biggest takeaways, is all of the knowledge and perspective that I gained, and all the people that I learned from. So I came away with something a lot different than what I expected I'd get from it. I got the networking as well, but I think the most valuable thing was the perspective and how it changed my thinking. That was the really big impactful experience that I had through it. So.
Perfect. And it's tough. It's tough to explain what happens in some of the classrooms to a founder or an entrepreneur who hasn't been in the program, because when you say to someone who's head down working on their business during the summer, you're going to get to come into these classes and hear from professors teaching theoretical that you can apply to your business. It doesn't sound like the most compelling, exciting proposition, but the faculty and the entrepreneurs and the C-suite executives that come through the next program and work with the teams are one of the big differentiators and one of the reasons why a lot of people apply. And I'm wondering, I'll keep this an open question so someone can go first. Give an example of a faculty member or an entrepreneur that you met through the program that really had an impact on your personal development or your company. And as we go through the three of you, you can't repeat the name of someone who was said before you. So who would like to start?
So I'll go first. I think, we met lots of great, impactful people through the program, but the one that has always stuck with me was Reza and his class that he teaches. A lot of the cases that we went through in Reza's class, I had actually done before at the IVHBA program, so I thought that I was, on top of it, and I knew all there was to know about it. But Reza kind of came at it with a completely different lens, and also going through them with, as a lens as an entrepreneur instead of as a student was really impactful. But he just kind of taught us to toughen up and think about problems a little bit differently, how to think big, how to take and manage risk. So I would that's been the most lasting person, I think, that I've carried forward from the program for me.
Terrific.
For me, so there's the number of professors that really helped. I really liked the negotiation class, actually. I thought that was interesting because that's one thing that I don't know if it's also a female thing. I don't like confrontation. So really thinking about it as more of a process helped me. And business every day, especially B2B business, it's all about negotiations. It's about working with other people. So I thought that was helpful. And then a couple of other shout outs for people that dropped into the class. I met, some of the entrepreneurs that did, Extreme Labs MR. Now he works on a different company right next to us, Autonomic. So I just think it's really interesting how everything comes full circle in the end, because they're teaching you something, but then next thing you know, you're working next to them and you're growing a company next to them. So it really helps to feel that sense of community.
Abbas?
All right, so Elijah stole mine, but there was a lot of value in the program. And another one of the sessions that I found helpful was actually Professor Nanda from Harvard Business School. So he came for, I think, 3 or 4 days to deliver a few sessions on fundraising. And even though in the past we had raised at Crowdbabble, we didn't necessarily negotiate everything that we should have in the term sheets when we were fundraising. So from Nanda's class, I learned a bit more about fundraising strategy, thinking beyond the current fundraise. So if you're raising an angel round or a seed round or a Series A, what you do now and the term sheet that you get right now from an investor will impact you for your Series B and C and D, and even if you go public or whatever it is. So Nanda really helped me think through that a bit better and helped me to negotiate the important terms. When you're raising funding, you always need funding yesterday, and sometimes you just skip over some of the things and you're like, whatever, I'll just deal with this later, or this doesn't matter, but it does matter. So that class really helped me to fundraise better.
Great example. Professor Ramanananda is the Harvard Business School venture finance teacher for the MBA program down there. And a lot of our alumni from all of the programs have given testimonials like that about how valuable that is when fundraising. One of our Next 36 alumni, Stephen Lake, who's co-founder of Thalmic Labs, he's an alumni of Next 36 and was interviewed by Maclean's magazine and said that because of Professor Nanda's course, when he went to raise from Silicon Valley investors investors, some very big names in the Bay Area. They were asking him how a 22, 23-year-old knew to ask about these particular terms because everybody else that they spoke to had no clue what they were talking about. And he gave credit to Professor Nanda's course as part of Next. And Reza and Ajay Agarwal is our academic director. He's the Peter Monk Professor of Entrepreneurship at Rodman School of Management at the University of Toronto. Has designed this rich curriculum where you're learning from some of the top professors from around North America in a way that is directly relevant to the company that you're building. We'll take some questions from Facebook Live. So Lauren B., who's working on a food business, wants to know how would a non-tech company fit in? It sounds like Lauren's working on a food business. We've had a number of non-tech businesses in all of our programs over the years. In the Next Founders programs, we've had companies like Morgan Hyatt's Greenlid, Jason Greenspan, a company called Whoosh, if you want to look into them. They make a product that cleans all of the technology screens, and they've been in the Apple Store and a bunch of other great businesses. Greenlid focused on initially recycling a compostable recycle bin for condos, and found out that they could apply that technology to places where mosquitoes and malaria and other insect-borne diseases were being carried. We've had a food business in the Next 36 called Hexa Foods, which is pet food using cricket flour. And so at Next Canada, we want to support entrepreneurs and businesses that are scalable, that are disrupting industries by default because of how easy it is to scale in technology quite often. It happens to be that I would say 85% of the businesses that have gone through the Next Founders program have been tech, but we want to support you regardless of kind of what industry or space you're building your business in. I don't know if any of those companies or other companies were in any of your cohorts that you would want to talk to. Feel free to jump in.
I can expand on Morgan's business. So as part of Next too, we got this privilege to have a executive coach. So we had the EO program. Morgan and I were faithful attendees. I think we were the only two that was there until the end. I think for some of the younger folks, they don't realize how important these type of things are because being a entrepreneur, being a CEO is kind of a lonely It's a lonely experience. You have a lot of hard problems and you're making decisions all the time. So it's good to have a panel of other people to work with. And we were lucky to have this sponsored for us. So we both work with an executive coach. And that's where Morgan posed this question. He wanted to kind of piggyback on the Olympic thing where he can actually help with malaria and it would receive really big coverage. And he had this courage issue where he wasn't sure because it wasn't the main part of his business. It would be a pivot. It would be slightly different. And I think we made a pact there on that breakfast. We would meet every week for breakfast and and he went and did it and he received huge coverage. So I actually think doesn't matter if you're tech or not tech. I think what matters most is the caliber of people around you because it's the network afterwards that really count. It's kind of the lifetime of peer coaching and that is really the long term, the long tail of the Next Founders program.
Thank you. And Lauren, if you're interested in talking to any of the alumni that we're mentioning, just message us through Facebook or email and we can make a connection there. We're happy to do that. Another question coming in from Galen who's asking, what is the typical age of participants in Next Founders? There's no formal age limitation or criteria. I would say most of the participants over the years have been in their early 20s through to their mid to late 30s. We are focused more on kind of, quote, younger entrepreneurs that are working on their first or second business and that have less business experience, formal business training, formal business education. But really, we're just looking for founders that have some traction, that have some feedback from the market, that there's an opportunity that people will pay for. And when our selection committee reviews all of the applications, there's no strict checklist that they go through, but they are looking, like I said, for traction. Usually, it manifests itself either in funding raised. We've had teams that have raised anywhere between, I would say, 100,000 and 3 or 4 million over the last couple of years. Maybe they haven't raised any funding. They're bootstrapping and they're funding the business through revenue. So they've got some significant revenue coming in. Often they have employees, they have staff and they're growing. Or the other group is, again, that PhD, that STEM founder who has not given away any equity in their business, but has all kinds of grants and funding coming in for research and has something that they're onto, and they're trying to figure out how to commercialize that. And some good examples of Next Founders alumni who have come from that side of the equation would be Nimmi. Carl Martin and Fatini Agrafiotti, co-founders of Nimmi, participated in the program in its first year. Nimmi makes a wearable wristband that allows you to unlock the technology around you based on your unique cardio rhythm. Some really cool technology. So when you're talking about security and privacy and your heartbeat is your password, very interesting Next Founders alumni. And another one that has been in the news recently would be Dr. Abraham Heifetz, who is the co-founder of Atomwise, which went through Next Founders, the Rotman CDL, was out in Y Combinator, and they're focused on applying AI to drug discovery, and recently announced it's approximately a $59 million Canadian fundraising announcement. So some examples of more of the science-based companies that have gone through Next Founders. I'm going to go back to Jane, because you've talked about being a strong female leader in technology and entrepreneurship, and it's an issue that we talk about a lot in the startup world. How do we get more underrepresented groups, including women, into STEM, into technology, into startups? Do you have any advice or suggestions for how we can achieve that, or advice to female founders that are thinking about applying?
Apply. I think the female underrepresentation is actually not huge in Canada as it is in other parts of the world, so we're lucky to be in Canada. I have the privilege of working with lots of, like, my first boss, the director of scientific affairs at the pharma company, was a female, and then when I was at the hospital there, so I guess I got the privilege of learning from other strong female role models. And in our company, we were talking about equal employment. We were like 50-50 as well, and it was really interesting because the ladies do their work really well, but sometimes they don't ask for the things that they should ask for, or the other very ambitious men out there would do the same. So I would encourage you to apply, ask, stand up, and just do it. But then the second part is that we tend to qualify a lot of the things that we do. So I tend to, everything good, I tend to also talk about the other side to be more balanced. So when you do apply, put your best foot forward. You don't need to qualify why you're successful, why you raise those things. That's fine. Like, we assume you're great. But just go out there, highlight the things that you do really well, and show your strengths.
Perfect, thank you. Another question that has come in is whether or not you can participate in the Next Founders program along with another accelerator or incubator. And the short answer is yes, you can, it's possible, but you will always get the most out of what you put into something. And so you don't want to spread yourselves too thin, but if you are in another accelerator program, the Next Founders, because of its flexible schedule and where you can kind of take a look at the classes that are being offered, is a nice complement to some of the other programs that you might be participating in currently or applying to. So don't be deterred from applying based on that piece of information. Because I think all of you have had some sort of experience with other accelerator incubator programs. Could you talk about how Next Founders is different from the other experiences you've had?
I actually haven't, so I'm going to pass the mic.
All right, so at Crowdbabble, we actually went through Next Founders and the DMZ playbook at the same time. So we got benefits out of both, but both programs are very different. So whereas the DMZ playbook program is more of an accelerator, it's really focused on helping you increase sales in the near term. So we were able to increase our sales more than 150% during those 6 months as part of the DMZ playbook. In a lot of these accelerator programs, you can measure the ROI in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 2 years. But I think what's different about Next Founders is it's not necessarily a sales accelerator program that's going to help you increase next month's revenue, but it's a strategic program. So if you're looking to pivot or find a bigger problem to solve, looking to create more value, whether it's monetary or whether it's impact to other people or whatever it may be, I think Next Founders is that program where you're not going to measure ROI in the next 3, 6, 12 months, but probably as a multiple of 10 years, 20 years, 30 years.
I agree with that because I changed the name of the company during the program, so that was super helpful. We went through 500 startups after, and that's a sales accelerator. We tripled our revenue during that time. So I do think Next Founders is a really good program for people who want to invest in them as entrepreneurs. It is a long-term future. They're investing in you. This is it doesn't cost anything, which is crazy because it's such a good, high caliber level of people who are giving you advice and helping you. And it's about you. So it's really about the founder more than the business, because the business could change. You could go on and found other businesses. I'm sure I'll found another one and you will too. So they're investing in you as a Canadian leader and someone who will create value and GDP for Canada. So it's I think it's an earlier stage program to most of the sales accelerator, actually.
Yeah, great answers. We keep talking about founder development, and even when you apply to Next Founders, you'll spend almost as much time talking about yourself as an individual and your mindset and your track record and what else you have done and what you're hoping to get out of the program as an individual, as you will talking about your venture and milestones. And that's because it is a long game for Next Canada. We're going to measure our success by looking at where our alumni are 10, 15, 20 years down the road and the impact that they're having. And so you'll find as you go through all of the programming, of course, we want you to have venture success, and we'll be taking a close look at your venture milestones, but we'll be also looking at your personal gaps in experience and training and kind of poking you and making you feel uncomfortable, because we want to develop those skills and those experiences for your next venture and the venture after that. So great response. What was the best piece of advice that you've ever received from, let's say, an entrepreneur or an investor?
Ooh, the best piece of advice. That's really hard, and I can't think of one instance where someone bequeathed advice onto me that changed everything, but I could share a piece of advice that I think that is really important, which is the most important thing when figuring out your venture is to figure out yourself. I think on the topic of, developing the person and not just the business, I was listening to a podcast the other day where a really successful VC said that 93% of their profits from exits as a fund came from pivots, right? So the journey is going to be longer than you think, or maybe shorter. It's going to be more difficult. It's going to not quite look like what you originally envisioned. But the important thing is that you develop yourself and give yourself the toolkit that allow you to get there. And one of the hardest things to be as a founder is confident enough to keep going and be a leader and a visionary and do all those things, but also be self-aware enough and humble enough to know when you're wrong and to listen when someone's talking to you like a customer, and to not hold on to any of your assumptions so tightly that you can't find the right direction. So it's finding that really difficult place to find between confidence and humility. I think that's the most important piece of advice that any entrepreneur could benefit from.
I have a specific instance that I remember from one of Reza's classes. He went through, I think we went through some examples of what other people are equipped with. Some people have education that equip them early. Some people come from more wealthy families. Some people come from, just places with more resources. And I started talking about the Valley, right? So how I have some cousins who are in the Valley. They grew up with programming. They all program and all these different things. And then by the time they're in high school, I feel like they're so much out-equipped than us. And I think Reza just said no. So the gist of the answer he gave was that basically the advice is just dream bigger and just think about what you want to be. This is all excuses, and just focus on things that you can control and that you can do. And all of this is not real. It's things that you're kind of half imagining. And I do think that's kind of true. A lot of what we, as an operator, you see what's in front of you. And what you need to be as an entrepreneur is a visionary. So you need to say, oh, I'm going to be there, or I want to be there, or the world needs to be there. So I'm going to create this, I'm going to pave this road to go there. And instead of thinking about all the resources that you don't have, is thinking about how can you, in a clever way, in a very nimble, capital efficient way, how do you get there? And I think that was something that really resonated with me. And then every time I find myself thinking about, oh, I don't have that, or we don't quite have that yet, I think about how we're going to get that versus, like making all this list of things that we don't have is about how do we get there. So that was very useful.
Yeah, so dream big, I think is the biggest advice I've received. I think depending on where I've been in my life in terms of running a business, the advice that I've received has helped a lot. But right now, it's kind of dream big is the biggest advice I have right now. When I started my first business, I just wanted to make some money. That's the reason why I started it. And then the second business I started, I wanted to make more money. And now I'm thinking that the reason that I'm running a business is not just for money. Yes, it is to make money, and it's to make a lot for sure. But there's other impact that I want to have on other people, and I want to improve lives. So, dream big. And the reason why I didn't do it from the beginning is because I just didn't think it was possible. So now, running a few businesses, gained some more confidence, understood that, hey, what I'm doing right now impacts other people and their lives. So that's the biggest advice that I've received, and I'm trying to pass that on too.
Terrific. Getting some questions in about the funding. So Next Founders, I wouldn't say that the funding is a major piece of the program, but a few years ago we did introduce $30,000 in non-dilutive grant funding for each venture that's in the program that's eligible. That funding comes through a relationship we have with the federal government, so the Federal Development Economic Agency of Southern Ontario. And so in order to qualify for that $30,000, you do need to be incorporated in Ontario, and you cannot have received certain forms of government funding in the past. The one that we hear about most commonly that is the OCE Smart Start funding. And so if you receive that, unfortunately, you don't qualify for our $30,000 because it's double dipping for reporting purposes. But otherwise, the $30,000 is available to all eligible teams. A question from, I think it's Josh, who wants to know, Josh Leslie, wants to know about the peer group, because we only take about 12 to 15 people into the Next Founders program. You're all working in completely different industries a lot of the time, but you're at roughly the same stage. And so the bonding and the sharing that happens amongst the Next Founders is another strong value proposition. Can any of you talk about what that's like in the program, and anybody that you have stayed in touch with after the program has ended?
Okay, so sure, I'll take the first stab at it. So I guess when you're an entrepreneur, it sometimes gets kind of lonely. When you're working in a company and you're reporting to someone, if you have an issue or you don't know how to solve a problem, you always have someone to approach. But when you're an entrepreneur, you're that person. So I've been in situations where I haven't known what action to take. There's no clear answer. There isn't enough data. There isn't enough information. So you don't know what the right answer is. And in those times, I basically call upon some of my peers who are experienced. Maybe they've gone through similar issues. And there's a couple people from my Next Founders cohort who I've kept in touch with. And recently, I've been going through some really hard decisions at Crowdbabble, especially as we raise funding. And I've called upon them, just met up for a coffee, heard about how they've solved the problem in the past. So it's an awesome peer network. In addition to that, I've also found mentors and advisors through Next Founders and Next Canada. And one of them, Peter Koresha from Wave, I've been meeting up with him or having regular calls with him because he's super experienced and has probably gone through a lot more than I have. So it's definitely a lot of value there.
In my cohort, there were a lot of people that were in different silos of business than what I was operating in. So it was fascinating to be in the same classroom and hearing their stories. I remember Ben from Mass Fidelity, they were talking, he's like this music person, he's talking about audiophile. So it was really fascinating to hear. But the people that I did keep in contact with longer term, I've been out of the program for like almost 3 years now. So we're actually from different cohorts. So Jessica from Eve Medical, Carl from Nimmi, because one is in wearable, the other one's in health. It's so closely related to what we do. So I tend to meet up with them more often, and I find that they're really helpful. We make introductions for each other, both on the funding side, right? And also on the partner side, Carl introduced us to one of our biggest wearable partners that we have, Xiaomi in China. So it was really wonderful.
Yeah, I think just to add a little bit to that, the part of the value of the peer network is not just having people to relate to. I think it's also being in a program with a bunch of other people who are probably smarter than you in many ways. And it really elevates your game. So being in that program, I looked around and there was all sorts of things I was doing well in my business and then other things that I wasn't. And it was an amazing opportunity to learn from other people who were just a little bit ahead of me at a similar stage in certain areas of the business. And a framework I've heard that before that I really like for mentorship is you should always have 3 people in your life. One, someone who's 20 years ahead of you where you want to get to. One person who's 3 years ahead of you that you can relate to and learn from. And then one person who's actually behind you but is smarter than you. And I think the Next Founders Next 36 program is an amazing way to find access to all 3 of those types of mentors. So it's kind of unique in that respect.
Perfect. And then I'm going to come back to the 3 of you with more input on fundraising. There's a question from Kevin through Facebook Live who's asking about kind of metrics and stats with regards to valuation and money raised for Next Founders. And I don't want to skirt or avoid the question, but because we define traction in such a wide range of ways, we've got people that have already raised millions of dollars, and then we've got people that have have $100,000 in grant money. It's difficult for us to kind of say, here's the stats for valuations post-program. What I can tell you, though, is that most of the Next Founders alumni that are looking to raise after they leave the program have ultimately been successful. Our alumni over the last 6 years have raised, I think it's slightly over $150 million and beyond post-program. But I want to throw it to the panelists for either more thoughts on how you were prepared for fundraising because of Next Founders, or any other advice for people like Kevin or other founders that are watching.
For sure. I think the first way it helps is brand. I think when you're going through a fundraising process, especially early in your business life cycle, the investor is going to be taking some sort of leap of faith on you. And the fact that you've gone through a program like Next Founders and you've had access to great mentorship and you've had some education in a lot of aspects of the business gives them some comfort. Well, a brand, you'll never raise money on a brand, I think. You have to do all sorts of other things well. I think the brand definitely helps. The other way is access to the network. I think Next Founders and Next Canada will be very valuable in making introductions. And then the third one, I'll actually echo the comments on Professor Nanda's class. Financing can be a really opaque and confusing process for a lot of first-time entrepreneurs and veteran entrepreneurs even. And getting access to just the knowledge on how venture finance works will allow you to step into those fundraising meetings and, again, project confidence, speak to investors with the language that they communicate with, and I think it's super helpful. So those are 3 things that I think really help on the fundraising side.
I think you don't have to fundraise. That's extra baller. If you can just grow on revenue. And I think Next Founders is, I don't think it should focus, it's too narrow for what Next Founders is about. They're investing in you. And one of the skills that you have that you will acquire from Professor Nanda's class and also from the network is fundraising. But that's part of a wider set of skills. And in order to be successful, of course, as a founder, you need to be able to hire well. You need to be able to lead your people. You need to build a product. You need to have all these other skills on top of fundraising. That said, it does help to understand the process and learn the process. But I think that's like maybe a tenth of the program.
Yeah, so like you're saying, Jane, fundraising is not for everyone. You may not need to raise funding, but if you do, realize that business is all about relationships. Fundraising is all relationships, and there's that saying, it's all about lines, not dots. So basically, if you want to fundraise, you need to start a relationship at least 6 months before you need the money. And start building those relationships. I think Next Founders helps in terms of allowing you access to more potential investors. Like I went to the Bay Area during the program, and I literally went through your list of advisors and mentors and reached out to everyone in the Bay Area who's involved in investment. So the program will help with that for sure. I already mentioned the NANDA's sessions, which then prepare you for the conversations and the negotiations that you're going to have. And that was the value that I found in the program.
Perfect. A couple other quick points. A few of you are working on ventures that have AI at their core. The next AI program that I talked about at the beginning delivers a lot of the same business education, but also layers on experts, global experts in natural language and computer vision, in deep learning and reinforcement learning. And while there's no guarantee that next founders, entrepreneurs can participate in all of those classes, when there is capacity, there's an opportunity for you to benefit from that next AI network as well. And we also are working with corporate partners who bring in top scientists and researchers to work with our teams. And so if AI is a differentiator in your business, it's one more reason to tap into the Next Canada network. And then for those of you who are asking, okay, what do I do now? What's next? Again, the application is done online. It's open until March the 20th, so that's your deadline. There's 2 steps to the application process. The first is written, and you'll be providing information on yourself and on your company. And so when it comes to your venture, you'll be talking about that traction that we keep highlighting and being able to talk about milestones that you've reached and where you plan to take your business. And then when you talk about yourself, again, you'll want to highlight your past experiences, other startups that you've worked on, domain expertise, highlighting where you failed and what you've learned from that failure is important. And then the second stage of the application is a video interview done using Kira. And Kira Talent is a Next 36 alumni venture. And it's a video platform where you'll be provided with 3 or 4 questions. You'll have 30 seconds or so to think about your answer, and then your webcam will turn on. And you'll basically have 45 seconds to provide your answer, which gets beamed to Next Canada headquarters. So if you haven't done a recorded video interview in the past, it can be a little bit unsettling at first, but there's an opportunity to do practice questions and to test the technology to make sure that everything is working. Once the applications are submitted, our selection committee will go through everybody and be following up. In some cases, there's a second round of either Google Hangouts or Skype video interviews, or interviews in person, and everybody will know if they're in the program by about the second week of April, and then the program starts at the beginning of May with that 1 or 2 day immersion block. I'm going to give the panelists an opportunity to kind of pitch and sell the program one last time. So last question is a piece of advice for someone who's thinking about applying. Doesn't need to be long, just a piece of advice.
All right. So while this program will provide a lot of value, you got to figure out what you want to get out of the program, because there's so much networking, there's so much different content that's delivered to you, and there's literally like 30 or 40 different mentors and advisors that are available to you through the program. So you need to figure out what makes sense for you. Are you trying to fundraise? Are you trying to pivot? Are you trying to, build a team? Whatever it is, and seek out those relevant people through the Next Canada network. Figure out what you want to achieve through this program. For me, it was I wanted to widen the scope of my business. I wanted to break through the ceiling that we saw coming up in 2 years, and we thought the program would help us to break through that. So figure out what you want to achieve through the program, because you got to commit some time to it. Again, you only get what you put into the program, so you got to make sure you're able to commit the time that you need to get the most out of that program.
Yeah, I echo that. Begin with the end in mind. Know what you need to get out of the program. The second is evaluate what you need and what your business needs. If your business right now is really time intensive and you can't give the program the time that you can get the best out of it, I would, just be truthful about what you can commit to it and how much you need. And then when you do the application, when you decide that this is right for you, when you do the application, take the time to compose yourself for the Kira interviews, because I do think in there, think about who you want to be your best self. Don't qualify, and just be that visionary that you are.
Yeah, I would say absolutely apply. I think it could help anybody, but I would say don't apply if you expect the program to, work magic for you or for it to deliver something for you. I think it's an amazing accelerator to help you grow. But if you can't dedicate enough time and mental energy into actually preparing for some of the classes, following up, seeking out the mentorship opportunities, then you're going to be taking the spot of someone else who might be able to make more of that opportunity. So I would just be honest with yourself too, is how much can you put in? Because it can be amazing if you can really, really put effort into it. So that would be my advice.
Perfect. Thank you. A huge thank you to Elijah, Jane, and Abbas for sharing their expertise with all of you watching live at home. I'd also like to thank again DMZ for hosting us here, our friends at New Screen for helping to deliver today's platform, and our superstar videographer and producer, Jeff Beardle. And I also want to thank all of you for tuning in. Just as a quick reminder, we'll be doing open office hours on March the 15th. There are a few spots left, and you can sign up through our website. For those of you in the Kitchener-Waterloo area, come and meet myself and some other Next Founders alumni on Thursday at Communitech at 11:30 in the Jelly Bean Room. And again, March 20th is the deadline to apply. I wish all of you the best of luck, and I hope that we'll get to meet you later on this year in the Next Founders program. Thank you and good luck.